I want to talk to you about the fundamental relationship, because this is the base, this is the underlying structure, the framework from which Entrepreneurship 3.0 is based. A new operating system for entrepreneurs in modern times. Because the old operating system isn't working, we have to look at a new operating system to help entrepreneurs really become more creatively free, become more creatively valuable, and on purpose. So there are four main components that exist within a sphere. And when these four components interact, when they're combined in concert, it gives rise to a radical creativity, a total advantage for any entrepreneur that I've ever worked with over 13 years. So I'd like to give you those four components and see how you're doing with them, and take a closer look at where you might want to apply your energy and concentration. Number one is that every entrepreneur has gotten into business and has continued to prevail in their business because of the quality of relationships that they have. They exist within a web of relationships, almost like a magnetic field, that holds them in a certain holding space. And when they poise themselves in such a way where other people are able to see the opportunity of them, and they are able to get value from the entrepreneur being more of themselves, things go off like bonkers. It's an incredible sweet spot. I mean, if there were a zone or a peak performance spot, this is where it is. And it's somewhere in between the entrepreneur's identity to be really who they are with their mask off, while at the same time be doing something that completely involves them at an incredibly intrinsic level, a very meaningful level and a very significant level. Because it's the entrepreneur who has more spiritual punch that will get ahead. How does he do that? Well, every entrepreneur has a personal gift. You and every entrepreneur I've ever met has a different way of looking at something. They have a different way of looking at what they create. They have a different way of observing the subject matter around them in their exterior conditions. And when they work with that subject matter, there's something in the interior condition of them that starts to come out. We've seen this with musicians who get into a certain space, and they get so into and immersed in what they're doing, we begin to see the value in what they're doing. In fact, we'll sit for hours and we're entranced by how they go at it, and they improvise, and they work with their tool and instrument, and they go at it. Well, I've seen entrepreneurs do that. And I notice that when they're involved that way, when they get such generative energy by virtue of what they're doing, we start to witness a personal gift, an X factor, a yes factor, something in them that magnetizes other people to them when they do it. And so the idea is we've got to take away everything else except that. So the less they do, the more rewards they get, internally, externally. Now, you might think, wow, that's funny. That's kind of against the idea of doing more. In other words, I got to do a lot more to get where I really need to be. That's not true for most entrepreneurs. They really want to simplify and get down to the bare essentials, the raw essentials of what really is needed by the people around them, to be able to see the opportunity in them. So the first thing is we've got to focus on a personal gift. And this is the root point for all dynamic entrepreneurship. That the differentiation that's needed to become more immune to competition, to become more hyper-creative in what they're doing, to create more enjoyment in their career, to have long-lasting enthusiasm, is how well they get access to and liberated by this unique ability or talent or personal gift. It all starts with something personal. So that's the first one. The second one is their ID, what's called their intrinsic desire, their ID. They're identified by what really matters to them. So the equation is E equals DM. And it's a spiritual economics. Energy equals what makes a difference and what matters. When an entrepreneur lines up his subject matter, when he works within his daily task, his weekly, monthly, annual task, to be doing things, to be creating something, bringing it into being, causing it to exist, new business forms, new product ideas, whatever it is that matters, and he does it on an individual and a collective level, there's a life force, there's an energy that is drawn up. It gives rise to such a way of being that I believe that he is continuously expressing the finest capacity of being that he can be in every moment. When he's creating, because his intellect, his spirituality, and his emotional self are all coming into one play. They fuse together when the entrepreneur is in the creative act. But in order for that creative act to prevail, One, it's got to matter to him, and number two, it's got to make a difference. So we combine that with a personal gift, and we have this powwow, we have this explosion of energy, of generative, creative energy, from which the entrepreneur begins to operate at the very source level. In other words, all of his actions and attention and his intention are given rise from this inner place that he arises out of, that he attends from. So what are the other two components? Well, the landscape of business today is not about products and services. You have to look at it like there are no products and services, because pretty much everybody has access to the same technology. We all have state-of-the-art computers. We all have pretty much the same, we're positioned the same way. And so to differentiate, we have to begin looking at a very particular type of conversation. I believe business today is a blend, a mesh of conversations that exist. And within those conversations, depending on how qualitative they are, that pretty much determines the destiny of the entrepreneur. And so in order for a conversation to be that transformative, the entrepreneur is called upon to have a shift of attention. And that attention is away from his own self-interest to more of a third-person way of paying attention, looking through the eyes of a customer. If you want to bypass 4 years of Harvard Business School, just look through the customer's eyes and find out what they buy. If you look through the eyes of the customer and you know what their world looks like, and you see how they're looking out at the world, you're going to be a much smarter and more relevant person, a much better resource in their life to make some serious change. So when does this entrepreneur start this conversation? Well, it might be in the sales environment. It might be an ongoing customer relationship. But there are 4 pieces of data from which the entrepreneur cooks up all of his recipes. Number 1 is the future of the customer. He has to target a certain customer that has a future that he's intrinsically excited about. Right? Number 2. In other words, that honestly in his inventory of what matters, the future of that customer truly matters more than his own profits. Number 2, he's in service to the challenges, the obstacles, what it is that that customer is afraid of losing most, and what the entrepreneur is going to do heroically to prevent that. Number 3 is what opportunities are available to the customer. And what can the entrepreneur do with his resources and his business and his teamwork and his tools and technologies? What can he do to influence those opportunities to happen faster and more easier? And number 4, strengths. Everyone's excited about what's working. Even specific skills that we have that excite us are areas that can work. Assets, strengths. So what can he do to bolster and be more of a supply line to his customer strengths so they get their message out to the world and they get to leave their footprint on the planet? People are looking for meaning and significance, and one of the ways to do that is to do more of what really excites them. The reason why all these are important is that the backdrop of all this is an emerging complexity that every single human being on the planet is facing. Life has gotten too complicated. And so we need this kind of help, leadership, direction. We need more confidence and creativity in order to lower all this fogginess, this distractibility, and this attention deficit disorder so the entrepreneur can truly create a better world. And once he does that, he can also live in the world that he creates. But what's number 4? He can't do it with everybody. There are only a certain type of person that the entrepreneur is meant to serve. So he has to find out and take inventory of the kind of individual and the traits that they contain that bring out his very best work. Because if he does that, then his best customers will always forgive him for his weaknesses because there's part of him that's indispensable. And I believe the indispensability comes from the entrepreneur being the bouncer of his own club and saying, there's only a certain type of person that gets in that we're meant to serve, and there's others that don't. And if they're not willing to take a stand on that, then the compromises are very significant. He inserts himself into a whole bunch of complexities and work that he probably shouldn't be doing, and later on, he'll get fired for it. So if you take these 4 components and you combine them in concert, from personal gift to the ID, the intrinsic desire, making a difference, what matters, and then we look at the transformative conversation, the TC, and then we look at the ICC, the ideal client criteria, and we line up all 4, what does it give rise to? A unique client experience. It gives rise to a totally unique, unfound, unique, authentic, one-of-a-kind, a runaway client experience that only the entrepreneur knows how to produce. And he continues to accessorize it. But underlying all that, what I love about this is he's able to be more of himself and actually be competitive. And that's the secret. Because what he loves is what he really owes the world. How serious are you about what you love? Because that's what you owe the world.